Today's program features
Well, I'm so glad to be with you today. It's a great honor to be back and see some of my old friends. Your rotogram says that my remarks are about conscious capitalism, liberating the heroic spirit of business. And while that's true, the other story I'm going to tell you is about a pig and a chicken. Before I get into the pig and the chicken, I just have to share with you a little bit about how deeply impactful Rotary has been on my life and that of my family for 3 generations. But before I do that, I just have to say, for the benefit of some of you guys who've been here for a long, doesn't Jim's corny jokes remind you of Jim Griffith? So the first remembrance I have of being aware of Rotary as a force for good in the world goes back about 90 years. There's a little town called Malakoff in Henderson County, near Cedar Creek Lake. In the years leading up to the Great Depression, the largest employer in the town was Texas Utilities, which operated a coal mine. In the middle of the Depression, when they thought things couldn't get worse, the decision was made to close the mine. When the largest employer of a little town announces lots of layoffs, it's bad news. There were a lot of people in town who thought, you know, this town doesn't have any reason to exist. We just need to shut it down and move on and cut our losses. But the president of the Rotary Club got the men together of the town, the leaders of the town who were Rotarians, and said, you know, we can make it here. We can help each other out. We can support each other. This is where our children go to school. This is where we go to church. This is where we raise our families. So they banded together, helped each other out, and the town survived. The president of that Rotary Club was my granddad, Dwight Carson. Going to the next generation, my dad was a Methodist preacher in East Texas. He moved around quite a bit, as preachers did in those days. He made it his business to be in the Rotary of every town he was in, and he in fact served as president of the Beaumont Rotary Club. Now, like most kids, I paid more attention to what my parents did than what they said, and I could tell that Rotary meant a lot to him. Moving to my generation, it was mentioned, my first career was here as a lawyer in downtown Dallas, and I was fortunate to join this club and be a member for about 20 years. I was able to serve both the Rotary Townhouse Board, the Rotary Board, and later served as president. And as president, it was my privilege to represent the club at the International Convention in Singapore. And I have to tell you, when you go experience an event like that, and you see people from all over the world bound by a common goal of service above self and the great work done in literally every continent on the planet, it's very inspiring. In the year of my presidency, I invited my dad to speak and was able to surprise him and present him a Paul Harris Fellow. And so that was a highlight of my presidential year. And so when I say I have a deep appreciation for Rotary, I hope you understand that it's not just lip service I've given to Rotary. Now, what is about this chicken and pig thing? So have you ever heard the old joke about the level of involvement of the chicken and the pig in breakfast? The chicken's involved, but the pig's committed. Well, I had just such an experience a few years ago. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my company. So Presco is a 75-year-old company, started in Oak Cliff, moved to Sherman in 1989. We are what we call a vertically integrated manufacturer of safety marking products. We make safety flags, survey ribbon, caution tape, barricade tape, those kind of things. We start with raw materials, make plastic, convert it all the way through to the end product. We also make industrial film that's used for a variety of things like hoses, ducting, military tents, IMAX movie screens, just a variety of industrial activities. So if you go back, I invested in the company in 2003 as a minority owner, and I was contributing where I could. In July 2015, our president got recruited away. I had introduced him to a business networking group thinking it would help his professional development, and sure enough, he got recruited away by somebody in that group. So no good deed goes unpunished. And as my partner and I were trying to figure out, okay, our president left, what are we going to do? My partner died. So in a 3-week period, I went from being the chicken to the pig. I was working 1 or 2 days a week, kind of semi-retired and not very involved other than at a high level. And, you know, I had, that was a very impactful thing. Fortunately, we had a succession plan that allowed me to make a financial settlement with my partner's widow, and I went from being an inactive, passive minority owner to being the owner. Now, I had been involved in a position of influence in organizations for some time. As I said, I was a founding partner of a law firm. I was CEO of a public company. I was a partner in this business, and I'd been able to influence things. But I had never been in the position of being, this is you, there's nobody else to look to. You look, your board is in the mirror, it's all on you. And I took this, you know, very seriously. And I really was searching for, you know, what does this mean? I'm in the, you know, certainly the last quarter of my career. What do I want the next few years to look like? And I did a great deal of thinking about responsibilities as a sole owner of this business. And that's when I came across this book called Conscious Capitalism, Liberating the Heroic Spirit of Business. Now, I want to preempt one question that may come up a little bit. This book was written by the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey. And I cannot tell you, because I don't know, what the impact of Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods does to this talk I'm giving, but all this was done before that acquisition happened. So, conscious capitalism is the opposite of the view held by Milton Friedman. He was one of the more famous business consultants of the last century, and his view was that the only responsibility of business was to its shareholders. Friedman was of the view that business leaders who cared about their employees or their community were merely socialists masquerading as capitalists. Conscious capitalism is the belief that a business should balance the interests of all its stakeholders, its shareholders, its employees, its vendors, its customers, its community, and balance the needs of all those stakeholders. And the premise is that it's possible to have a business that makes a positive impact in the world and still can provide a financial return, an attractive financial return. In fact, there's a sequel to this book called Firms of Endearment. And in Firms of Endearment, they analyzed companies that they thought operated on the precepts of conscious capitalism. And in a 15-year survey, those companies averaged a 21% return when the S&P 500 averaged a 6.5% return. And so another premise is that a well-run, values-centered business can contribute to the welfare of people in a more tangible, direct way than any organization. Now, this concept is not limited to just small businesses. The foreword to this book was written by a man named Bill George, who was CEO of a company called Medtronic, which under his leadership as a follower of conscious capitalism precepts went from a $1 billion market capitalization to $60 billion capitalization. So this is just not limited to small business. During my reading of this book, there was one phrase that literally jumped off the page and told me I had found what I was looking for. And that was a comment that profit is like blood to the body. It's necessary to exist, but it's not why you exist. Making money is good, and you have to make money to make investments because machinery breaks and you need new facilities and you got to invest in things, but it's not why you exist. And literally, as I was reading this book, I stopped because I'd been searching for a purpose or a way to kind of define my ownership of the company, and I said, that's it. That's what it's about. And so the goal is for a conscious company to be a beacon of hope and opportunity for their employees and their community and the world at large. So exactly what are the tenets of conscious capitalism? There are four main principles. One, a business needs to identify a higher purpose than just making money. Identify a purpose of why you exist. You need to embrace stakeholder integration. That's the idea of looking for win-win solutions with vendors, customers, your community at large. You have to have conscious leadership. The leadership of the company has to be on board. And you have to have a conscious culture and management. So before I delve into some of the specifics of how this precepts get implemented, I wanted to tell you a little bit about John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, because I think his is an interesting story. He came of age in Austin in the early 70s. And when I got to Austin in the mid-70s, there were still a lot of his type running around. You know, the hippies who went to class all the time and never got a degree. Well, that was Mackey. He got over 120 hours at the University of Texas, but never graduated. He thought at the time that corporations were greedy and existed solely to exploit workers in society. So he was attracted to that counterculture movement and still practices yoga. He lived in a housing co-op in Austin. In 1978, he and some of his hippie friends started Safer Way Grocery, a natural food grocery in Austin. In 1980, they renamed it as Whole Foods. Then early on, he became very disenchanted with the co-op style of management. He thought that every decision became politicized, it really stifled innovation, and so early on he got away from the co-op as the model he wanted to pursue. Then in 1981, they had a record flood in Austin. Their store had 8 feet of water in it. All their inventory was ruined, their coolers were ruined, their store was ruined, they had not a dime of insurance. And at that time, his employees, his customers, his bank, his investors, everybody came together and they were able to reopen the store. And that was really the start of his embrace of conscious capitalism, when he realized that the community could be more powerful than just a profit motive. So one of the things he says that I really believe is that the voluntary exchange for mutual benefit, which is the definition of capitalism, has lifted more people out of poverty than any other movement in the world. So his first chapter in this book is titled Capitalism, Marvelous, Misunderstood, Misaligned. And so the goal of his view is the goal is to make the pie bigger, that the poor can become wealthier without the wealthy becoming poorer. Communism was trying to lift people out of poverty, but we all know it has failed. And one important distinction to make, conscious capitalism is not the same thing as corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is viewed as kind of a redemptive act by a corporation to make up for its sins. Conscious capitalism embraces the community as an inherent part of who the business is and what it's about, and it measures itself against its ability to fulfill those goals. As I was thinking about this, I thought, I could just get up and say, conscious capitalism means you just try to run your business under the precepts of the four-way test and sit down. But I thought you'd probably feel cheated if that's all I gave you. Another analogy I made to myself, this is mentioned in the book, but I thought of it as I was reading the book. In college, I studied a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He studied, as you may know the story, he's a psychologist who studied a lot of patients with depression, and he came to believe that happiness is not something to be pursued, but happiness is something that ensues as a result of living a life of meaning and purpose. So I could say that conscious capitalism is a reinterpretation of Frankl's work for business rather than an individual. So the higher purpose. There are different types of higher purpose you can identify. With Whole Foods, it was clearly they wanted to promote organic food, healthy eating. Patagonia is cited as an example of a company that's a conscious company that tries to promote outdoor activities and healthy activities. And I have to say, I really struggled for a while with thinking, okay, what can this dirty, nasty manufacturing company have as a higher purpose? And after a while, it dawned on me that our higher purpose could be to make our employees' lives better. We have about 180 employees, and about 140 of them are blue-collar workers, about 40 of them are salary workers. And so I've identified and adopted that purpose, so that's our higher purpose at Presco. The whole stakeholder integration thing, it's the idea of looking for win-win scenarios. I've literally walked out of meetings where I had customers say, well, you need to sell me this at this product, and I don't care if you lose money. I guess we're not going to do business together, because I refuse to engage in that kind of discussion or dialogue. There are people in the world that want to work that way, and you know what? We don't have to work with them. Another interesting point made in the book is that Gallop, the well-known research organization, did a study in 155 countries on human happiness. Their research said that the biggest factor in individuals' happiness was not wealth, health, or family, but a good job. A good job defined as being work with meaning, with people you enjoyed being with, and for a company that valued you as a human being. So I thought interesting, Whole Foods, at the end of an employee's probationary period, whether or not a permanent job offer is extended is made by a vote of the team. The theory is it's easier to fool a boss than the whole team. I thought that was very interesting. One thing they've devoted 5 to 10% of their profits to nonprofits. So for a company like mine, things like energy efficiency, recycling, and packaging efficiencies are kind of the low-hanging fruit of environmental concerns, and we're working on those things diligently to try to reduce our footprint of waste. We're fortunate our manufacturing processes don't generate waste, but just the activity of packaging things and sticking them on pallets and putting them on trucks and all that do, and we can't impact that. Conscious leadership is something I've adopted, and it really kind of a model. You view the business more as a trustee than an owner, that you're there to try to make it good for everybody, not just for yourself. And that's something I found very motivating. The conscious culture element or tenet is culture is a very powerful force. You know, Peter Drucker, another well-known business consultant, was kind of one of the first leaders to write about companies operating this way, and he was famous for a saying he had said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the idea is that you have a good culture in a company, that's going to overcome a lot of operational areas, or you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but having a great strategy without a purpose is kind of like having a beautiful highway to nowhere. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about how we choose to embody and embrace conscious capitalism at Presco. So the average engagement of employees and of employers is around 30%. We use a software tool that allows us twice a year to measure our employees' engagement. That means how much do they care about the work? Do they care about their coworkers? Do they think the company cares about them? Metrics like that. We typically range around 85% of employee engagement. So how do we do it? So one of the things we do, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say a lot. I did not come up with a lot of the things we do. My partner who died was very committed to the employees and taking care of the employees. I think we didn't have the structure and the definition as much as we do now under conscious capitalism. For example, we used to have a very arbitrary year-end bonus that was kind of determined on how we felt in early December. And the employees weren't really, they got a check, but it wasn't anything they could really measure and get their teeth into. Now we report the profits of the company to the company quarterly, and 20% of all profits go to the employees at the end of the year. So that's something they're engaged in. They know it's a tangible measure that their contribution is saving money, making the company better, serving the customers better, results in them getting a real nice bonus in early December. We also have a very generous 401k plan in that we match dollar for dollar any dollars the employees put in their 401 retirement accounts, which results in about another 10% of the profits going to the employees. We do some other things. If you've been in our plan on Monday, you would have seen 180 backpacks filled up with school supplies. We give backpacks to all the children and grandchildren of our employees, to the point where the HR department goes around the community and checks the local communities and says, all right, what does a fifth grader at this school need? What does an eighth grader at this school need? What does a first grader at this school need? We had about 180 backpacks outfitted with proper school supplies so that all those kids could start school with proper school supplies. We have a clinic in the plant. We have a nurse practitioner 30 hours a week. Am I finished? Okay, a couple more. We provide 100% college scholarships to Grayson County Community College for the dependents of our employees, so they can get 2 years of college out of the way, paid for. And I always tell them, you know, if you do good in the first 2 years of school, you can get aid for the last 2 years. We typically have 8 to 10 students a year that take advantage of that. We do lots and lots of other things. I won't belabor you with any further time, but I would just tell you that I'd be happy to share this book. The first one that wants it, I've read it, I finished. I have multiple copies in the office. If one of you would like to take this, you're welcome to it. It made a very meaningful impact on my life. I'm happy to share that story with you today. And if anybody has any questions, time permitting, Dana, I'd be happy to answer that. Thank you very much for your time.
Joe, and if you'll stick around for just a minute, sure. Thank you so much for your presentation to us today. And no, that was not your signal. I don't know what that was, but it woke some people up, I think. But I wanted to thank you. We've got a couple of gifts for you. Okay. So this is something I'm really excited to hand to you because of your involvement in the history of our club. And this is our history book. So this was printed on our centennial year in 2011. And so it has the history of our club, and much of it is correlated to the history of our city of Dallas and our community. And so this one's actually special because it's made just for you, in that today all the members that have circulated around here have signed this in honor of your presenting to us today. So we're very appreciative of your being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And we also have this little crystal globe, which we want to give you, that signifies the impact that you're making by talking about conscious capitalism. So this is just another little thing we'd like to present you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Wasn't that incredible, you guys? And I'm sure that Joe said you would stick around for a few more minutes if people want to come and visit with you. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to visit with Joe. Thank you. Okay, and a few quick announcements. Next week, we will be meeting here, same time, same place. And we're going to be hearing about the North Korea human rights. And we also have a board of directors meeting immediately following. And this is just a reminder that the following week happens to be the 5th Wednesday that falls in the month of August. And so this year we're starting something new. With every 5th Wednesday, we are not having lunch. We are having a dinner social meeting. So the first opportunity will be Wednesday, August the 29th. We are going to get together and have a fun social at the Cadeau restaurant, which is in North Dallas on Preston Road. And Kellyanne Sutton is going to be leading us in a really fun activity. So please RSVP for that. Let us know you're going to come. For the regular price of lunch, so your typical $25, you get food and your first drink. So please RSVP, let us know you're going to come, and we're going to have a fun activity for everybody to participate in. Thanks again to all of our members and all of our guests who attended today. We hope you all enjoyed our program. And while Rotary membership is by invitation only, we certainly welcome your inquiry if you're interested, because somebody thought very highly of you to invite you today. So we hope you'll look into joining our club and learning how it feels to be so ingrained in service above self here in our community. I look forward to seeing you all next week. So continue to share the gift of Rotary, be people of action, and be the inspiration. Now in closing, will all the fellow Rotarians please stand and share with me and everybody live streaming in of the things that we think, say, and do? Second. Third. And fourth. And at the Rotary Club of Dallas, we have a fifth. And I say, yes, it is. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.